The biggest mistake that I have seen all over again is try to sell functionality. So, oh, my product is fantastic because this can do A, B, C, D, and it's much cheaper on these things. What is the outcome? Because you are not buying functionalities. What is the outcome?
Hello and welcome to the Emerge Product Market Fit Academy series, where we're joined by leading operators and founders in EdTech to share practical insights and guidance for early stage founders. So if you're building the future of learning and work, then this is for you. I'm Zara, and I'm joined by our guest today, Guillermo Miranda. Guillermo is one of the most experienced senior executives in the L&D space. He currently balances his time between advising unicorns like BetterUp and early stage founders and early stage startups like FutureFit AI, an Emerge portfolio company, as well as being a venture partner at Emerge. Most recently, he was Boeing's Chief Learning Officer and Vice President of Leadership Development. Before joining Boeing, he was IBM's Global Head of CSR and President of the IBM Foundation. He also held roles as IBM's Chief Learning Officer and was the first CHRO for the newly chartered IBM Digital Business Group. Now, I could go on about Guillermo's extensive background, but in summary, he has a wealth of experience when it comes to all things talent, leadership, culture, and L&D. Hi, Guillermo. I am so excited to jump in.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me, Sarah. Pleasure.
Let's now move in to the heart of our conversation today. We have a lineup of 4 key questions to discuss, focused on people and culture. I'll be asking Guillermo about the big unanswered challenges he sees in L&D, how founders should approach selling into L&D and HR, how early stage founders can acquire, retain, and optimize talent, and finally, what is culture and how do you build it at early stages? Diving straight into the first topic, Guillermo, what to you are the 3 big unanswered challenges that you see right now in L&D? Where should founders be building?
Well, this is a deep question. We can stay all afternoon here. But look, if you have to pick 3 areas where things can get better, and this is a journey. L&D has been on a transition from a more traditional training-focused organization into a business outcome organization. So the first thing that where I see an area of opportunity, clearly in how flawless you can make the UX experience for users. We come from a space where the focus was on the administrators. Initially, the platforms were designed and created for the administrator to push activities into learners. But then as we evolved, the world of LXPs started, and then many things are created, and L&D is more or less a multimodal experience. Now, a multimodal can be very patchy and uneven, or flawless and fantastic, like many of our consumer experiences. So I think that that's an area clearly of opportunity, flawless UX experiences in the flow of work. There are platform plays there. There are API and integration plays. There are plenty of spaces. The important thing is at the end, for the learner, for the user, what you see is something that is cohesive, integrated, easy. Second area of opportunity that I see is data. Data, but not data for the sake of data. Data for the sake of insights and for the sake of future-looking opportunities. We come again from a world of reporting on the past. And yes, sometimes you need to have some statistics of what happened, but you only record the past in order to learn for the future. And the magic of data and deep dive specialization is that then you can provide insights on how to do things better, how to pinpoint the areas of opportunity for learners, how to pinpoint the areas of opportunities for teams, for companies. Okay, so it's about reinventing from the very base of the learner record store, if you want, how you can create insights into the future. And I think that's a second area of opportunity that, again, can take different forms. And it starts very clearly with how do I understand data beyond demographics, how I put some lenses of consumer economy, of the behavior of the learner, of the user, and how to help that into the future. The third area of opportunity that I see clearly is around a hybrid learning coach for the users, AI driven, assistant if you want, a co-pilot if you want, whatever you want to conceive, but basically somebody that can be on your side, be an additional player on your side that can help you to finish things, can help you to better understand, can help you to push for a little nag in order to get things done, can help you to connect dots, can help you with simple answers at front, and can make a reality something that price point is unaffordable at this point, to have a dedicated coach every single employee of every company. No, but technology can do that, and that way you can create the future with generative AI, this hybrid career learning coach on your side. Those are three areas that I see as opportunity. Of course, technology is emerging, and a lot of players are starting to pinpoint into those areas.
And across those three areas, from one, making learning seamless, secondly, allowing you to collect data for the sake of insights and future opportunities, and finally, the hybrid learning coach / co-pilot, all of these seem to fit into the sort of generative AI bucket, where now we can do things with AI that, as you said previously, just from a cost perspective wasn't possible, and really democratize better learning experiences. Would love to know if you've actually seen any startups that you've been impressed with in these three areas.
Okay, let me start declaring bias at front, because I have the privilege to be part of Emerge. So we see many of fantastic startups. I have the privilege to be part of Rich Capital, where we also see a set of startups that go there. I have the privilege to be sitting in the advisory board of some of these unicorns. So let's start first with a clear differentiation between companies that are much more consolidated, that already have an ongoing product and are moving ahead a good speed. And in terms of how to integrate things in front of the learner, you start with the basis of skills. And in that space, probably companies like Beamery are doing a lot of help to the market, are doing a lot to drive the market forward, applying technology to unify things that before were last year history and now can be the face into the future. I can see also LXP platforms that are continue to progress, continue to make their mark. Of course, Degree is more or less a consolidated brand. You have Sana Labs that is doing interesting things. You have different options there. And then in terms of careers, in terms of opportunity, you have companies like Future Fit that are working on workforce development, companies like Career Karma that are pivoting into this generative AI coach, and frontline workers. That's another area that sometimes we forgot. And I have been close to a company headquartered in Zurich called the Beekeeper, and they focus on frontline workers, and they evolve from early communications into more of an integral dashboard for frontline workers. But there are plenty of white spaces out there.
Some great examples. When you talk about white spaces, would you consider the spaces that these companies are operating in still white spaces, given that there's no clear incumbent working in these three areas of really making seamless learning experiences, allowing that use of data to open up your opportunities, and then the co-pilot side? Do you consider those still white spaces?
So if you really want to go to the blue ocean strategy space, there is a play of integration. I think that we are working to optimize pieces. But I have not seen yet a real integrator behind that can help to create this seamless experience for the user and also to facilitate the whole ecosystem orchestration. A big challenge for CLOs, CTOs, and I've been sitting in those chairs, I've been dealing with that, is how you integrate and orchestrate. And I make a very clear differentiation between the word integration versus the word orchestration. Integration is a passive thing. You get things connected. Okay, you can do intelligence. In order to do orchestrations, everything needs to play harmonically. So it's not just connecting, it's making be sure that things are playing harmonically. So this is where I believe with technology, there is a play and a space to continue to innovate in the overall employee talent life cycle, from the onboarding space to the retirement or keeping skills available for the future. So this whole area of integration from behind makes sense, or integration at the front, that they still is the HRMS the only integrator at this point? Maybe not.
I love how you distinguish between integrating and orchestrating. Great point there. Now, if you have a company building in this white space, or they're building in the
Mm.
topics that you're talking about, one of the key questions on founders' minds is, how do I sell into L&D and HR? What is the approach that I should take? There's many different questions ranging from who the stakeholders are, what are the best ways to get buy-in. So for you, if you were a founder and you were building a product that you know would really fundamentally change the lives of people in L&D and HR, how would you approach actually selling that product?
Well, first you need to know the market and have this clear product fit alignment. And then knowing the market, you need to understand which companies are closer to your perfect profile. Start doing this matching. In this environment, with this specific product, these are the companies where I see a much closer fit. Second, understand those companies. Understand those companies from the point of view of the business. What do they do? How do these companies create value? Where are the gaps that my product then can help them to be faster to market, to be more innovative, to have the right characteristics for the clients? And then start doing the research of who are the stakeholders, who can be my buyer. And not necessarily are the obvious ones. I have seen many cases where instead of going to the traditional functional route, you go to the business units. The CIO sometimes for innovations tend to be in the right company is a fantastic buyer. The business unit leaders, the sales organizations, the marketing organizations. So first, understand your product fit and map the market. Don't just jump. Then be sure that you understand the dynamic of the company, what they need to create value, how your product aligns. And then look for alternative routes. And of course, connections are important. Network is important. So be sure that you are tapping into those connections and that network in order to create the opportunities. There is no one strategy that wins. There are different strategies, and even with different companies, sometimes you have to play differently, depending on the culture of the company. And then you need to have alternative routes. You cannot say, oh, this is my sales funnel. You have a long-term sales funnel. And these are complex companies, usually in regulated industries where the sales process is longer. This is more of my consumer sales funnel. I can get this signed quickly, one after the other. This is my enterprise sales funnel where I can get to mid-sized companies, maybe more close to experimenting with a shorter procurement cycle, etc. And then these are the companies where I have a strong, deep connection that they are willing to test somehow my product and maybe I can have more of a partnership, a co-creation relationship, not necessarily strictly commercial. So I think you need to play all of these cards. There is not a single card.
Absolutely. It's very complex with a lot of moving parts, but no product, no fancy product can be good enough to compensate for not knowing the market well enough and knowing the companies and the stakeholders. So that deep market research is really important. Would love to know, obviously, you work with so many companies, you see so many companies selling into L&D and HR. What do founders most often get wrong? Because sometimes I see they've ticked all these boxes and they're really struggling to get in. What are the things that often get overlooked?
Well, the biggest mistake that I have seen all over again is try to sell functionality. So, oh, my product is fantastic because this can do A, B, C, D, and it's much cheaper on these things. And what is the outcome? Because you are not buying functionalities. Okay, this is fantastic, but what is the outcome? If you are going to buy a car, you have several options in the market. And your outcome is actually transportation. Your outcome is not to enjoy all the features in your dashboard. The outcome is transportation. So we need to think the same way when we are selling to companies and to consumers. You have to sell the outcome. You cannot sell functionalities. And yet, the functionalities will help, will make your product probably more relevant. But start with the outcome and then go back into how you get into that outcome. But you don't sell the functionalities, you sell the outcomes. I think that's probably the biggest mistake. And this is very common in the SaaS space. Software as a service is a space where there is a long legacy of selling functionalities, because this is the tradition of software and this is the basis where I come. And then the second biggest mistake that I have seen is talk in technical terms instead of business terms. And so if I don't understand the language of the business of that industry, I go to my terms, and then nobody is listening on the other side. They disconnect and they are just pleasantly smiling until the tick of the call is gone or the meeting is finished. I need to understand that I need to language of the business. And that means also that I need to do a little research, come back to the point that we made. So technical jargon, unless it's a very specialized sell to a highly specialized niche, not usual, doesn't work so easily. It's about what is the outcome, what is the business language that you should talk.
Both fantastic points, Guillermo, on the selling outcomes and not features, and then also avoiding talking in technical terms instead of business terms. I think particularly as we see the emergence of more and more AI companies, and in the edtech space, more companies built with deeply technical founders, it's going to be so much more important to be able to sell your product not in the terms of your niche PhD in a particular area of AI, but in terms of the outcomes that it brings to the average person. And I think particularly with this AI revolution, you have more and more people using AI for their everyday work, but they don't have a deep understanding of what goes on behind that. So selling it to them in those terms doesn't make any sense. So fantastic advice there. On the topic of sales, but moving slightly into a different aspect of startup growth, let's talk talent, and specifically how, as an early stage startup, you sell yourself to talent, because at that stage, it's all about the people that you get on board to go on that journey with you. Would love to know if you have any frameworks or processes for how early stage founders can acquire, retain, and also optimize top talent.
Absolutely. I think that one of the critical roles of a founder, especially a founder that is starting to consolidate market fit, a founder that is between Series A, probably starting to get into Series B, is how I build the team, how I create the right combination of skills and talent to provide the results that I have promised to the market and to my investors. So one thing that is basic, but sometimes we forgot, and I had seen this in several of the companies and startups that I am involved, is role clarity. Okay? And role clarity doesn't mean single role focus. It means that at a given time and a given moment, what is my role in the team? So it's good that at the beginning there is a lot of innovation and a lot of a little chaotic creativity in a startup. But having clarity on what role you are playing in this very specific sprint, not necessarily forever, again, is what is your role in this sprint? What is your role in this task? Having role clarity among the participants on a sprint, on a task, is extremely important. The second thing is more the culture that you are starting to create, and is alignment on the mindset of how we are creating differentiation in the market. What is our secret sauce? And how we are coming back to that every time that we have a challenge. So alignment on how we create value to the market and how we get traction. I call it mindset alignment. And that's important because sometimes you find out that here is a co-founder that is driving a lot of force right, a co-founder that is driving left, and they have not talked to each other. And the whole team behind is a little confused because this person wants to change the world through ABC, and this person wants to change the world through XYZ. And they are not aligned. They believe that they have the same understanding, but sometimes not. So alignment on the mindset is important. And then you have to enable the teams, and enable the teams in terms of what are the resources, the tools, and the clarity of skills that are needed to get things done. Okay. So if one of my roles as a founder or a co-founder is to allow things to happen, is because I am able to provide the right tools, the right clarity at the right time. Okay. And have the skills that are needed to get things done. The life of a startup is not an easy life. There are a lot of challenges on a daily basis, but those challenges cannot be nobody that knows how to do this that is in this specific sprint, or we don't know how to get this additional tooling in order to get things done, or we don't have the mentality or the resources to get to the next step on our journey. So I think that having clarity on the roles, having a good alignment on the mindset, and enabling the right tooling resources and having the skills that will bring the company to the next stage are fundamental. And this is at the core of what is the role of a co-founder, a founder, in this initial stage of the company.
Absolutely. And when you're moving at breakneck speed, which you often are in startups, it can be very easy to forget to check in and make sure you're aligned on the mindset, on the roles at any given moment, and also just to overlook the sort of skills and the learning side, which needs to be constant from early on. So this is really great insight into how to optimize and retain top talent. I'd like to go one step back in terms of attracting that top talent and understand what is the number one thing, or maybe 1 to 3 things that founders can do to bring in top talent. And what kind of reasons do founders fail to do that when they have a great product and they know they can be successful, but it's really tough out there to bring in top talent. So what should they be doing differently?
Well, I think that this is about what are the kind of leadership standards that you put up front. How you, with those leadership standards, you create a culture for the company that you are forming, right? And on those leadership standards, there are things that should be at front. So I think it's important to provide autonomy and a sense of ownership to every team member in a company. Autonomy to get things done without being micromanaging, and ownership to provide a sense that I am part of this adventure. I can take decisions. Then you create an atmosphere where communication flows. There is no fear. There is no positioning. There is no silence Open communication creates collaboration. And this is extremely important. And having a culture of driving with coaching and empowerment. So I will not tell you all the time the answers, because then you are creating a dependency on the founder. Everybody will be paralyzed expecting for the answer and then keep moving. No, you create a culture of coaching where you allow the people to find the answer. As much as you are rushing through, and sometimes you believe that you have the answer, maybe there is a better answer from the team. So that combination of coaching and empowerment on the day-to-day of making decisions is very important. Clearly, in this space of technology startups, flexibility on the way that you work is very important. Providing a space that is a hybrid agreement, a remote agreement with collaboration. You cannot assume that you will be able to lock your team in a single location and get things done. Sometimes you may need to bring the team in a single location for a sprint or something, but the top talent in the space values the ability to have flexibility at work, to hybrid environments. So autonomy and ownership, very clear, open communication that brings collaboration up front, creating a space where coaching and empowerment is the way to manage teams, and then flexible options to work. That is important.
I love that you actually started with setting strong leadership standards. It can be one of those things that's easy to talk about, but really difficult to do in practice and understand how do I actually, I talk about ethics and integrity in my organization, but how at the early stages of startup building, when it is actually most important to bake it in, how do you actually do that?
Consistent behavior. Uh, you can you have to walk the talk, and in order to get all these things done, you have to have a consistent behavior that aligns with those standards that you are trying to push into your organization. If you don't have a consistent behavior and the people read through, oh, this guy is not exactly doing what he said, or this lady is moving around something that expressed before. So you have to have a very clear, consistent behavior, walk the talk. And that's the only way that things get percolated and transmit. And this is all about your credibility as a founder. If you don't have a consistent behavior and you say A and do B, and you say C and do D in every given time, then it's not uh, consistent behavior. There is a phrase from a politician that says, I didn't lie. I just changed my opinion. Well, that's not consistent behavior. So don't change your opinion too frequently, because then people will perceive that you are lying. As simple as that.
Being aware that people are watching whether you do what you say you're going to do, and then taking their decisions on how they're going to act. It brings us on to our final topic of culture. Again, like setting high leadership standard, it's something that we know is important, but is also difficult to do. And I think we've touched on a lot of aspects of this, from the autonomy and ownership piece, the communication, the coaching, flexible work. But at the heart of it, culture is really hard to define. So I'm going to ask you a few questions on culture. But to start with, how do you define culture? What is culture to you?
The things that naturally happen without supervision. That's culture. How a company behaves, things naturally happen without supervision.
We know that culture is just so important, from hiring to growth to business agility, but often it's not prioritized early enough and it becomes really, really hard to build that later. Why do you think that, one, companies aren't doing this early enough? And two, what are the easiest steps that they should be taking to prioritize it?
Well, first, I think that it's important to have a good understanding that you are creating culture every day, okay? Especially in organizations that are emerging, okay? You are creating culture every day with the ways that things are done, with the ways that you behave as a founder, or the leadership team under your control are behaving. So be clear. Second is, culture is created with intentionality. So you need to understand, you need to reflect on what is behind the decisions that I am taking. What is behind the choices that we are making? So intentionality is important to create culture. And then it's important for the people to talk about, because sometimes it's a mute culture, and that's not a good culture. A mute culture is things happen, nobody explains, things happen, and there is no clear rationale. Talk about, yes, guys, we believe that this is the right course of action, and this is the kind of culture that we want to create. And then somebody will say, well, I don't understand this as the right decision. And then you have an open conversation and you land in a common space, or explain how you come across with a decision. This is, and a startup is not a democracy. And a startup, and in general, companies are not democracies, are well organized group of people that are running towards a common goal, but are not necessarily democracies. And these aspects of intentionality, these aspects of openly talk about how you create culture, how you behave in a way that you create this operating system. At the end of the day, what you are creating is the memory of operating system. That's what at the end of the day culture becomes. And great cultures are created with great founders that are able to inspire this operating system, be consistent, be intentional, talk about it. And different companies may need also a slightly different cultures, but you have to reflect, you have to be conscious. If the culture is created by chance, then you didn't have the opportunity to design. It's like in a city. If things are happening by chance, then there is not an urbanistic plan or how things should flow better. And those are very inconsistent cities from a point of view of planning and organization and how things happen in the city. When you are creating a layout, the intentionality is important. And again, no one size fits all. It depends on the sector, it depends on the size, it depends also on the personality, the character of the founder sometimes. But if you reflect about that, if you talk about that, if you are intentional and culture not happen by chance, then probably you are in the right path.
That's such a great point. And, that culture is really, it's always being created, whether you think about it or not. But if you want it to be a good culture, you need to be intentional about it. You need to understand yourself, what you want your culture to be, and then act accordingly. This might be a little bit of a tricky one to answer, but for founders that are listening in that, have been building their company for a while and maybe haven't prioritized culture, and have realized that they've allowed a culture to be created that they didn't actively take part in. What can they do now once the company has already started growing? What can they do to take charge of that culture and start changing things?
Well, first, reflect about what is the kind of behavior, hidden operating system that is moving every day an organization. So be conscious about. If you ignore this and now say, "Oh, I forgot to really focus on what kind of culture I am creating on my company," you start with a reflection of where we are adjusting maybe the journey, or recognizing the good things and starting to adjust some areas where maybe that's not the kind of, if I will do it intentionally one more time, maybe I will adjust. So reflect first, take a picture, do a little scanning, and then discuss, talk about it. And that way you can start adjusting if you want course correct some of these areas where you don't see alignment of the culture that you may want to envision. And if the organization is at a stage that you can co-create some of these elements, involve your leadership team, involve your employees. At the end of the day, culture is a collective way of behaving. So it's not you are going to define the culture as a founder. Is that you can be a driver, but it's much bigger than yourself, the company itself. So be conscious, course correct, bring people into the process, be intentional, walk the talk.
My final question on this, I always love learning from people's mistakes. What is the number one thing that you see people get wrong on culture?
That's $1 million question or €1 million question. I think that now I think that sometimes we double emphasize the innovation and we forgot the everyday. What I mean is we try to live into the future that we are aspiring, forgetting that there is a present that we need to pass through first to get into the future. So being too aspirational is okay, but being only aspirational is not okay. So the biggest mistake that I see probably is that you are living into the future and forgetting about the present. And as we said earlier, you create culture every day. So live in the present, be clear about today. No, when we grow up, we will do that. What are you doing today? How you are solving this problem today, how you are behaving on, no, in the future, we are going to hire by skills. But today I'm hiring my friend because I really need some support to get things done. Or in the future, we are going to sell to enterprise clients. But today, I will make a compromise and just do whatever I can to maintain my pipeline of sales. So aspirations don't build cultures alone. You need to live the present. And probably that's the biggest dichotomy that sometimes you see with founders. They have a lot of clarity on how they want things in the future to happen, and they are not thinking about how things are happening today so they can breach into the future that they are dreaming about.
That was a brilliant answer to our €1 million question. And I love what you said, that you can be as aspirational as you want, but don't be only aspirational. And you really need to understand that culture plays such a big part in reaching those aspirations. So don't leave that behind in the everyday. Thank you, Guillermo. Let's move into the final part of our session today, our quick fire round. So I'm going to ask you a quick question. Would love for you to respond with a one-liner. Are you ready?
Ready. Let's go.
So, question one, if you were building a startup in L&D, what would it be?
Copilot coach for careers, skills, and in general for the people management community.
What is one common practice in L&D that you find either most frustrating or ineffective?
Trying to mirror academia. I think that we build pieces of L&D with the university model, and I think that focusing on curricula, focusing on these things tends to be very inner work instead of thinking about the user and the learner.
Absolutely, and we could do a whole nother episode just on that topic. It's super interesting. The next question is, what is one technology that you believe will revolutionize corporate learning in the next 5 years?
Well, that's an easy answer. Generative AI. I think that we are at the beginning of a cycle of technology to rethink monetization processes, to rethink relationships, and to rethink the basis of how you get things to impact society. And there is a very simple, good analogy here. We are moving from the world of boxed relational databases into the world of vectorial and graphical databases. That's the big shift. And because we have that, then we can have generative AI with all the processors capability that we have acquired.
I'm often blown away by just how exciting it is to be here at this time. We're going to see so many things change at a speed we've never seen before. So incredibly exciting there. And my final question for you is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received about leadership?
Be yourself, find your own voice. When I first got promoted to vice president many years ago at IBM, my mentor, my long-term mentor said to me, you need to be clear that you got here because you were trying to imitate, you were trying to become this role model. Now you are in a space that you need to be yourself. You need to find your own voice and you need to succeed with that. If not, you are going to fake your future. Don't fake your future. Find your own voice Be yourself.
It's kind of linked to what you said about culture, that there's no one size fits all formula for culture or for leadership. And it's really important to sit down with yourself and understand what kind of culture within yourself and your company you want to create. Thank you so much, Guillermo. I don't even know where to start. We've covered so many fantastic insights, from white spaces and L&D to attracting top talent and building culture. There's so many exciting things in this episode. So I just want to say a huge, huge thank you for sharing all of that with us today.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And thank you for the opportunity to be here, Sarah.
Thank you, Guillermo.
Thanks for listening to the Emerge Product Market Fit Academy. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it, follow our channel, and if you're feeling generous, share it with a friend.